We're back here at NCBA Convention in Houston, Texas. Our coverage brought to us by Zoetis. We're talking now with Matt Makens, and we're going to be discussing quite a bit of weather here. Matt, you might introduce yourself to our listeners and what you do for your career.
Matt Makens, meteorologist, done it for 20 years. During the course of the last year, Dr. Art Douglas, who's a legend for long-term forecasts, primarily worked for CattleFax, decided it's time to slow down a little bit. So I was brought in and worked with Dr. Art, still do, but I'm taking over those kind of duties for CattleFax and also do similar work for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, looking at, maybe some short-term heads-up kind of things of, hey, watch out for that cold next week, but really more focusing on seasonal forecasts, the long-term business.
Well, as we look back on 2021, it was a year where we saw widespread drought, including some dryness areas in Iowa. Can you give us a quick recap of, what you saw transition throughout the year?
So last year, La Nina was strong. It was different than this year's La Nina. Some of the patterns are a little different. But bottom line was, we saw drought growth across the northern plains, Nebraska. Then it started to move into Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin. And so early in that season, the worry was, we've got a dry outlook, very warm temperatures. And that's when there was a lot of concern for corn. As we ended the season, you look back at it and you say, wow, the timing of the storms helped that crop tremendously. Not necessarily the weather pattern, overall wetness, but it was the timing of everything that was really, really beneficial. And then you look at some of the warm temperature spikes that happened in the periods of dryness. I was, at the end of the season, I thought, wow, that area got really lucky. Mother Nature was looking out here and sent just enough moisture at the right times for a lot of folks. Now, it wasn't ideal for everybody, but so looking at that season, early on, very worried. By the end of it, kind of like, wow, well done, Mother Nature.
As we look ahead to this coming growing season, a lot of, concern or just folks thinking about those subsoil moisture profiles, especially in Iowa as we get close to the growing season. I know a lot of farmers are wishing for a pretty heavy snowpack. Maybe give us an update. What's the latest you're seeing as far as dryness going into the upcoming season?
So let's go out, say, a couple of months, and there will be, I hate to say frequent storm systems because that may imply lots and lots of water. It does turn into lots and lots of water, but south and southeast of the area. But there are storm systems coming in, and there's plenty of cold air, as we know, from January and early February. So there is the combination to build a snowpack. And the long-term outlook over, say, the next few months is all the most similar years, the analog years you look at for building these forecasts, and forecast modeling to that extent too, all indicate cooler than normal periods of time over the next few months. To me, that implies a slower melt, better soil penetration of that snowpack. It will help runoff. It will help stock water supplies. The problem is as you go farther west from Iowa, you run into bigger issues. The soil is already drier. They didn't really benefit from fall precip, whereas other areas did. You run into an area of drought that's just grown to the point where it's going to take a lot more than these small systems. It's going to take something substantial there. But for Iowa, last year's spring is a good indicator for this year's spring.
All this information that you put together, maybe explain how you communicate maybe with farmers and how they're able to access that information and how they're able to use it.
In written form, I send novels to CattleFax and National Cattlemen Beef Association members. A lot of that information can be found not only written, but on, every Tuesday night on RFD TV, we do C2C, and occasionally I'll pop in there with some forecasts for the longer range for anybody that doesn't read or subscribe to those kind of prints. And then you have social media channels, mostly for National Cattlemen's. They're publishing things as I send it. So if I see an outlook like for the spring and say, this is going to be a good post for you, you can find that information on social media. So it's ranging from memberships to free stuff to TV to social to written form. We try to please everybody the way they get their information.
Let's also quickly hit on international weather. A lot of eyes been on South America this year. What's the latest that we're seeing with the weather patterns in those, those major crop areas? We're talking Brazil and Argentina.
Well, northern Argentina is not likely to shift at all. Very, very bad drought. The wetness pattern favors maybe the far, far, far northern areas, but not most of the drought area. Then you work into, say, southern Brazil, which has been quite dry through January. That area may start to see an uptick in moisture. And it was like last year. Similar setup. Last year, the wetness hit southern Brazil in December into January, improved their second growing season, second crop. This year, it may do that for southern Brazil. So Argentina, probably not favorable at all, but southern Argentina, the second crops actually have a better outlook than the first go-round.
Matt, really appreciate the time and information. How can our listeners stay connected with you?
You can find me on social media, LinkedIn, anywhere else, and Makensweather.com is another one. A lot of folks just pop in there with a quick question. Maybe there's one the other day about a fellow in Nebraska. He's like, I'm calving right around February 7th. I need to know how cold it's going to be. Even if you just drop me a line like that, I'm happy to answer that.
Thanks for the time, and thanks for talking with us today.
My pleasure, and thanks for having me.
Again, that's Matt Makens here at the NCBA Convention in Houston, Texas. Our coverage brought to you by Zoetis.